Shabbat Shalom, all esteem belong to the Most High Yahuwah. We back again. We are back again for the truth-telling session to extend the realities that debunk the lies. All esteem, all honor. May Yahuwah alone be lifted in this truth-telling session. We are definitely going to expose some lies because tribulation is happening like never before. Record-breaking in the history of time. And we're going to break it down so we can figure out what's really happening and how to prepare according to what is written in the text, according to what is given in the word. Because, of course, the enemy has done everything possible to change the facts, to alter the facts, to alter the realities in which we live today. But I'm excited again. I'm always excited to come back and share the truth because the enemy, again, is, the scriptures tell us that the Hashatan has transformed himself into a messenger of light. And Paul goes on to say, it's no great thing if his followers, his ministers do the same thing. And we have so many that are out today claiming to be his ministers, claiming to be those whom he has sent, the true Mashiach, the true Messiah. But we got to expose the lies about what's really happening right now. A lot of people, again, are driven by emotion and not scriptural facts, because it's been another gospel or good news, if you will, that has been proclaimed throughout the ages, that has been made known throughout history. And we don't want to, again, be those people led astray. Messiah told the apostles whom he had picked, he said, take heed that no one deceives you. Make sure that no one is hoodwinking you. A lot of people believe that they can't be deceived because they think they are the elect. Well, they were the elect. They were those whom he had chosen, whom he had selected before the foundation of the world. And to think that you can't be deceived when he told the very people that he had picked not to be deceived, then you might just be deceived. But we don't want to be them again. We don't want to be them. We want to know what truth is in context. We want to walk according to it. We don't want to follow the patterns of this world, the deceptions of this age, the continual twists and turns that is happening everywhere. All right. A lot is going on right now, all over the world, especially in the last Babylon. So much is happening. And we need truth and context so we can be prepared to do war with the enemy. All right. So, yes, all esteem belongs to the Most High Yahuwah. I'm excited. So we're going to have a significant topic today. It's going to be we're going to talk in context about the persecution of Christians. And are you, wherever you may be, are prepared for what is coming? Messiah told us about what is going to happen in the end of the age and how we ought to prepare ourselves. But unfortunately, most people have fallen under churchianity and they are preparing contrary to what's coming. They have a twisted understanding about what's actually taking place. I see y'all all out there in the chat, dropping your comments. Looks like mostly on YouTube. I see one on Facebook. Yeah, we slim on this side. Truth don't go viral in wicked times. It doesn't. By the time truth goes viral, it's too late. It's over. It's over. So we definitely got to get into the truth about what's happening, particularly regarding the Christianity persecution. Right now, according to statistics, there is over 78 countries of known persecution of Christians. Known persecution. This is not a hypothetical. These are reported. Even though it's not advertised, there are websites out there that talks about persecution that's happened to those everywhere from Africa to the Middle East, the Dust Bowl, even here in Babylon. Just not how we see in places where hundreds and thousands get wiped out in one scoop. A lot of people, again, we got to understand the truth about what's taking place. All right. According to consistent statistics, roughly 380 million Christians worldwide face high levels of persecution and discrimination because of their quote unquote faith, because of what they believe. All right. I'm sure you've seen it in the movies. I'm pretty sure you've seen it in the headlines. They may have discussed this with you in church. If you were a church goer, or maybe you still do church because you think it's all right. But hopefully after this message, you will know the difference and why you might not want to be a part of church. All right. Why are they being persecuted? It's a good question. Glad you asked. We got to get into the origin of Christianity, do a little bit of historical research or talk about the history of Christianity just for a tad bit so we can lay the foundation to know which direction we ought to be headed in. All right, let me bring this up here. I know the font's a little small. Oops, let me exit that. I don't know how I just did that. All right. So, give me a second here. Pull up my other reader. Unfortunately, there we go. Bam. All right. So the way is what is originally known by those who follow the truth. The way. Okay. Early followers of Yahusha in the first century are called the way. And we know this when we read Acts chapter 9, verse 2. This emphasizes walking in covenant with Yahuwah through Yahusha. All right. This is how it really came down to existence as far as what the identity of the people were. Those who saw them identified them as followers of the way. Okay, that's important to understand. Table that thought right there as we move on. All right, Mashiach led a small regime of individuals who he had personally picked that were established long before the foundation of the world. Those apostles, we all know that, again, is written right there. A handful of their writings are recorded that were placed into the so-called Bible when the Council of Nicaea and others got together to decide what you're going to read and what you're not going to read if you are a church member. Okay, but Messiah taught a way that was contrary to what the world was doing, how they were functioning, how they operated, and even more so, how the people who oversaw them at the time were moving. Those Pharisees, Sadducees, and overrulers and rulers of the Yahudim, they were being taught contrary to what Mashiach came in and had established. Okay, so what we want to understand, again, he taught contrary. Understand that that's a key reality to what we're going to identify here in this study today. But know that he taught inconsistent with what was being given to the people whom the Most High had chosen and called when he originally extended his covenant from Abraham, Isaac to Jacob or Jacob. All right. We know that when Mashiach came, he was a Nazarene or from a Nazarenes, or the Nazarenes, believers. These were believers who were known as Nazarene or watchmen or guardians. That's what Nazarene or Nazarenes mean. Okay, tied to Yahusha of Nazareth, a Hebrew identification. This was a Hebrew from the tribes of Jacob. We know Scripture says Messiah himself said, "I did not come except for the lost sheep of the house of Yasharal." That's who he came for. And if you didn't know, Nazarene means guardians. watchmen. What are they watching? What are they guarding? We'll talk about that as we go. But that's who he came for, and that's what people who were of them understood them to be. Right? This is recorded in the scriptures more than once. Right? They were guardians of the way. Okay, and what Messiah had taught them and demonstrated that to them along the way. Okay, as they went on, the title they received, and of course, this is English. So in those days, it was Paleo Hebrew. So these weren't the correct spelling of it, but they were identified as disciples of the Messiah, Mashiach. Okay, the Messiah, Yahusha. Right? Identify themselves as Talmudim, which are disciples of the Anointed One, Mashiach. Rooted in Torah, prophets, not a religion. They were not a religious group, religious gathering. They were disciples, and disciples means taught ones, students. All right, they were students of Yahusha. That's how they were identified. They just didn't call them disciples as we typically say in the world, right? People will say, well, I'm a disciple, or this is a disciple. They were identified as disciples of a particular leader, which is Yahusha. Okay, you can be a disciple. You go to school to learn whatever your professor, you're a disciple of your professor because that's something that you wanted to learn. Nonetheless, they were disciples of the Redeemer, the right arm of the Most High, Yahuwah, sent to redeem mankind, the branch extended to all nations for salvation. Right? We know that when Antioch came, they inherited a title, not to themselves, not given to themselves, but they inherited a title called Christione. All right. Outsiders of Antioch first labeled them Christione, Greek for followers of Christios. Christios in Greek is anointed one. Understand that this title is not simply for Messiah Yahusha. This title simply meant anointed. All right, we'll talk about that as we go. But again, in the scriptures, we know the disciples were first called Christians in Antioch. All right, Christione or Christians all come from the same ideology or translation or transliteration of the word. Acts 11:26, it tells us this when they were first called. Okay, we know Acts is written later on. We'll get into that as we go on too. Yep, but here it is actually right here. Book of Acts spanned through 30 to 62 EC or AD. After Mashiach came, the book of Acts started to unfold as far as the ways that were carried out and, of course, recorded in the word. Now, these are all vital points so we can understand where we are headed, what is happening, and where we're headed in these end times. All right? Understand, as I said a second ago, Christos, literal meaning. All right, Christos simply means anointed or smeared with oil. You put oil on a person, you anoint them. They didn't necessarily do that when the word Christos was used in the Greek, but they didn't simply put oil on the people. That was just a way to say the person was anointed if you follow that particular practice. All right, it was used in the Greek text to describe anyone anointed, kings, priests, or even objects for sacred use. All right, in the Septuagint, right, which is the Greek translation of the Tanka, which we, through different how it's formatted, call the Torah today. All right, Christos was used to translate the Hebrew word Mashiach, meaning anointed one. All right, this could apply to a king like David, a priest, or even a foreign ruler like Cyrus. All right, that's why the scripture says, thus says Yahuwah to his anointed Mashiach, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have held to subdue nations before him. Yashayahu, or Isaiah 54 or 45:1. So when we look at this, the scripture says that Cyrus was not even of the 12 tribes, but he was quote unquote anointed. Okay, this is an important piece to the pie. Okay, understand what we're talking about here, family. He was not of the tribes, but the Most High had anointed him, meaning he had consecrated him. He had set him apart. It's an identity. It's a title. It is not an actual person. To be anointed doesn't mean you are, if someone says the anointed one, It's a general term. Who you're talking about needs to follow behind that. It needs to follow behind that. So when people say Christ is Lord, who are they talking about? We're going to find out as we stroll along here. Again, King Cyrus was a Christ for Yahuwah. He was a anointed one. He was a Mashiach for Yahuwah because he had established him as such. All right. Moving on, we got Latin and Roman usage. Okay, as the message spread in the Roman Empire, the Latin form Christius was used, and the name began to stick through state records and Roman law. Okay, so anyone that was of the Christianes, who followed the Christos, the anointed one, they labeled them, jotted them off, marked them down in their books, their records, as followers of such. Okay, they are Christius, right? And this is how, again, when you look through history, you'll see that the Romans had to identify these people. They only knew their language, as obviously they operate according to their language. Just like if you're in America, you're going to go to most places in the government, the city, the civic center, and it's going to be in English. It's not going to be in Greek or and Italian or any other language. It's going to be in a language that runs that country. And that's what they did. They put Christios, the followers of Christios, as Christianes or Christioni. All right, we get to the medieval Europe time frame when Constantine in 321 EC, later councils, Rome, state, religion absorbed the way. Okay, we're going to talk a little specific about this because this is the turning point for a reality you need to grasp in these end times. All right, Old French, Old English later shaped the word Christian into Christianity. Okay, that's where we get Christianity from. So when we go back, we look at the top piece to the pie, we say we understood it was the way. Okay, but when Constantine became a so-called Christian, then that's when that is at the time frame of when the word it went from, again, the way to Christios, the identifiers. But understand, the people who called them Christians were not following the true Mashiach. Okay, they just didn't know how. They knew nothing other than to look at how they behaved, how they move, how they carry themselves, and they label them such according to their dialect, according to their tone. All right. So let's see here. Give me a second and pull this thing up. All right. So I can bring this back down. All right. So in 313 EC, we got the Edict Milan. All right. Legalized Christianity in the Roman Empire, ending state persecution. They did away per se with state persecution. They made Christians the part of the state, and how they operated, they recognized their so-called religion. Okay, state support. Constantine funded church buildings, granted privilege to clergy, and returned confiscated property, gave them their stuff back. Okay, then came along the Council of Nicaea in 325 EC, called by Constantine to resolve disputes, produced the Nicene Creed. All right, then we have fusion with Christianity, with the empire. Christianity became linked to the imperial power, gaining wealth, status, and political influence. This is where you get rich preachers today. You know, those top millionaires, TD Fakes, Joe Osters, and stuff like that. Yeah, because they got mixed in, they blended in, and they received the opportunity to become wealthy among the state. Okay, shift in practice. Pagan customs, titles, and festivals began to merge with Christian. And I emphasize Christian. Okay, worship under imperial oversight. And then we have foundation of the church state. This is where the church state came into existence. Set the stage for Christianity becoming the official religion of empire under Theodosius, 380 EC. Okay, This is when the church state reality came into existence. If you don't know what church state is, it simply means the state runs the church. The church operates under the state. So when you hear someone say their organization is a nonprofit institution, church institution, that means the state controls the church. Okay. And now, briefly, Catholic identity. Okay. By the late 4th century, under Emperor Theodosius the First, Christianity was declared the official religion of Rome. Okay. Again, this is 380 EC Edict of Thessalonica. From then on, the term Catholic, which means universal, okay, means everybody's involved. All right, described as Roman-backed church, described the Roman-backed church as the dominant unified religion. That's where Catholicism actually came from. All right, the terminology again means universal, means you can come up in here because we're going to dominate and everyone's going to follow that. All right, so let's do a quick recap. Yahusha, the followers of Yahusha were known by their own or called by those who knew them, the way, Nazarene, or disciples. That's what they were known by. Okay, those by whom they did not know or were not of them called them Christioni, or Christian, as we call it today. Okay, they did not know who they were. So by the time the KJV Bible was written, put together, Christians had become the official title given by Gentiles, not chosen Hebrews. Okay, this came from the Gentile nations, Rome, Europe, and now today, America. All right. And we talked last week about how the name of JC was concocted and passed down into where people say it's transliterated back to these other YAH or YES, whatever names. Okay. They were as they moved along with transitioning the title Christianity from Christios or Christioni down to Christian, they also changed the name to better fit the language in which it applied. Okay, so we cleared last week. If you ain't already, look at last week's study. There is no such thing as changing the name of the true Messiah, the true anointed one. Okay, so as I said, Yahuwah is Yahusha. Okay, doesn't change. If it changed, then a malak, a messenger or prophet would have been made known that, and we would have at least one prophecy to tell us he was going to change his name by way of translation, transliteration, or any other form, but nothing exists on that. Again, we're talking about deception, drawing people into the ideology of this name change. All right, Roman conflicts. We're not going to go all over these, but understand something. When Rome was established, they've had many conflicts within and from without, outside of the empire. All right, they had a lot of revolts from within, from political civil wars to the Yahudim rising against them, you name it. People trying to take the seat of the one who was in charge, creating chaos, right? This happened. They had invasions that took place. They had other wars that happened. It was a constant state of no peace, no safety, just war and chaos that happened all throughout the existence of Rome during those times. Okay, what do you think the so-called Christians of Rome were doing during the times of revolts and war? What do you think they were doing during those times? All right, I'll let you think about that for a second. After Constantine's conversion until the fall of Western Empire, Rome was defending three pillars, three things they stood to fight against, to lose. They didn't want to lose these: their politics, their territory, and their religion. Remember, Rome was a church state. Okay, whatever the church did, it was approved and recognized by Rome. Understand that. Okay, so they were defending what they believed and called church, which, as we saw here a second ago, that they mingled worldly practices with Hebrew customs that came from followers of the way, the Nazarene people, the guardians of the way. Okay, know this: believers had to take a side. Period. Okay, this isn't America. It wasn't America at that time where you can just sit out and be neutral, right? You couldn't pick a so-called liberal party or whatever. You either chose to be Roman backing or back the Romans, or you became an enemy, right? If you didn't side with Rome, you were an enemy of the state, period. Okay, period. There was no illusion of freedom of religion or whatever that nonsense was back then. If they said you had to be a part of this regime to stay and to survive, then that was the decision that you made, or you went against it and you dealt with persecution. Point blank, period. Okay. I know they they blur the lines over the years, especially with America, but no, that's not how it went in those days. And in all reality, that's really not how it is today. It's just they've perfected the blurring of the lines, right? You dealt with suffering if you didn't join the Roman regime, if you didn't pledge your allegiance to the Roman regime, period. Okay. That's how it was. And the reality, as I said before, that's exactly how it is today. Many just don't see it because they have them hoodwinked on their view, on their illusions of freedoms by the Bill of Fake Rights. Okay, when Rome came under attack, it was seen as persecution of the religious state Christianity. When Rome came under attack, Christianity was under attack. It was no difference. Okay, whatever Rome stood on or stood by, if it wasn't being supported or backed, if it was under attack, it came against the Roman Empire for any reason, the understanding was that Christianity was in a fight too. All right. But we know that Rome became Europe. That is a historical fact people can't deny, even though they want to turn a blind eye to it. We know that to be true. Rome literally morphed into Europe. All right. But we move on and we'll look at Europe. They had tons of revolts, inside attacks that happened, civil wars where the nations of Rome or the Roman or the European empires battled each other. Okay, they fought against each other. We also, again, outside attacks, they had several wars, French and England. Okay, you had the French, Spanish, and other fightings over Italian states. You had so much that was going on in Europe that they were dealing with internal battles and external battles really all throughout their existence, and it hasn't truly changed today. Okay, just as Rome defended the three pillars: politics, territory, religion, so did Europe. Make no mistake about it. They didn't pass it off, and I'm gonna confirm this with you. All esteem belongs to the Most High as we move on. All right, we know that Europe transitioned and created through their, through the lies of running from the emperor. They've created America. Okay, that's what actually took place. Europe, in their conquest, created America. Understand that, right? So, America, as we know, had tons when it was concocted in their colonial era. They had tons of revolts, a lot of bucking going on inside of America in this fight to establish so-called independence or whatever the case may be. And we know there's been tons of so-called wars that has happened with America. That should be America, not Europe up there. Okay, it's American conflicts that has happened, right? So as America followed Rome, America followed Europe and Rome, defending politics, territory, and religion. All right. Here's some quotes to solidify this of what they really stood for. Okay, you got Rome. Cicero on the Republic. He said that for the whole glory of virtue is in the protection of the Republic and the safety of the state. Okay, remember, church and state were together. They did not defend state and left church out. They battled to defend both because they consider them one. You get to the time of Europe. Charles V, I don't know if that's letter or his name, whatever number or his name, but anyways, Holy Roman Emperor's speech to the Diet of Worms, 1521. Not sure why they even call it that, but whatever. As a descendant of the Christian emperors of this noble German nation, from the Catholic kings of Spain and the archdukes of Austria and the dukes of how do you pronounce that? Burgundy. There we go. All of them were faithful to the death in defending the faith and honor of the empire. They put two together. Listen, they defend the faith, they defend the empire, and what? The welfare of their kingdoms. Said, I will follow their example, maintaining what? Religion, maintain the empire and the hereditary and my hereditary dominions. So they were standing and fighting for faith. They were standing and fighting for the empire. They considered them one. All right. America, we get to John Adams. All right. And he said in the letter to the Massachusetts Militia, our Constitution was made only for a moral and what? Religious people to it is wholly inadequate to governments of any other. Okay, so they wanted to defend their religion, okay, and their moral, and they did this under their so-called constitution. That's what they were defending, and America still defends that to this day. So when we look back over the history of the nations, we know that politics, land, and religion is what they merge into what they call empire. And they defended this to the death, as we just read. They were not concerned, for the most part, about losing their life more than they were concerned about losing the empire, because they wanted the empire to go on for many generations for their children. Understand, family. There is no prophecy in the entirety of the word that warned of Christians being persecuted. You cannot find it nowhere in the scriptures, period. Did you catch that? There isn't a prophecy in all the word that warns that Christians will be persecuted. So what is really taking place? Let's look at it. And Yahusha went out and departed from the temple, and the disciples came to him to show him the buildings of the temple. And Yahusha said to them, do you see all these things? Truly I say to you, there will not be left here one stone upon another that will not be thrown down. And as he sat on the Mount of Olives, they went from the temple to the Mount of Olives. The disciples came to him privately, saying, tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and the end of this evil, wicked age? And Yahusha answered and said unto them, take heed that no one deceives you. For you out there who think you can't be deceived because you call yourself the elect, for many will come in my name, saying, I am the anointed. Listen, and will deceive many. I am the anointed. I am the what? Christos. I am the Mashiach. I am the one who they've put oil on and said, go out in his name. All right. He said, many of these people will appear and will deceive many people. We are living in that time, family. He goes on to say, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled. For all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Okay, Matthew chapter 24, verse 1 through 8. At the beginning, where it's highlighted in yellow, what did he say? He said, and you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. What are we hearing today, family? What are we hearing all over the place? What did they just do in the White House or the Pentagon, I want to say? Secretary of quote unquote war. right? They called 800 generals, military commanders, admirals, and generals for a so-called secret meeting. What are they preparing for? They are preparing for war. Okay, you will hear of wars and you will hear of rumors of wars. He did not say you will be in a war in this sense. So all these people who believe from their twisted church understanding that they're going to be persecuted because of what's happening in the world today, which it simply comes down to this reality. Okay, understand. It comes down to this reality. They are trying to stand and defend church state. Okay, because you don't find nothing in a word saying that Christians will be persecuted, right? We hear it, we see it. Okay, wars, earthquakes, famines, sicknesses, it's happening. Okay, but the first thing, as we've talked about, probably the last 5 studies, and probably more than that, is he warned that people will come in his true name, claiming to be anointed, claiming to receive the anointing to go speak in his name, but fool many people. How many of you out there are seeing these prophets today? They're talking about Yahusha woke them up, Yahuwah woke them up, and now they're telling you that there's going to be a rapture. They're telling you that the Exodus is going to be on a certain day. They're telling you that you need to go ahead and buy up some land and prepare yourself as a homesteader for tribulation. They're telling you everything, but nothing that is not but nothing that aligns with what the word says. Okay, who was Yahusha warning? This draws the line in the sand right here. Okay, Yahusha was preparing the followers of the way, not Christians. He was not preparing church people. If he was going to prepare church people, Christians, the crowd, the masses, the multitude, then he would have not spoken to 11 disciples privately on the Mount of Olives. He would have had this conversation with the multitudes as he has done throughout his walk. When he wanted them to know something, he spoke to them again in what? Parables. But when it came to the disciples, the true men who were called, chosen, and sent, he had a separate, away from the crowd, warning to give to them. So when you talk about Christianity persecution, listen, it's a lot and it is real. But nonetheless, this is not what Yahusha warned about. And we're going to solidify that as we go on. Messiah says, then you will be delivered up to be afflicted and will be and will kill you. And you will be hated by all nations for his name's sake. We definitely gonna break that down. It says, and then many will be offended and they will betray one another and will hate one another, and many false prophets will arise and will deceive many, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold, but he who endures to the end will be saved. The end of what? Lawlessness, false prophets, okay? Persecution of the Kodeshim, the true chosen people who walk according to the way. Who are these people? We're going to define that here in the word in a minute by the word, okay? And he gives a very powerful, and he sums up this tribulation phase, but he gives a very powerful understanding that goes over the heads of many people. He said, and this good news of the reign will be proclaimed, preached in all the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. Matthew or Matthew 24, 9-14. He said, this good news for a reason, because there's another good news out there that really ain't so good. And it's the good news that Christians have been following for a long time. The good news that they got from empire, church state, okay? Christians have been defending and being persecuted for state religion, Christianity, and not for the namesake of Yahusha. Understand that. There is a line being drawn in the word. so that you don't fall into the side of the illusion that because you are a Christian, you are dealing with persecution per what Yahusha had told the elect. Negative. Negative. People are literally suffering because of church, state, religion. That's what they're following. All right. Politics, territory, religion. That is what's actually. Somebody said my mic drop. Here we go. Mic check, mic check. Mic check. Can you hear me? Somebody drop some give me a 7 if you can hear me in the comments. Yeah, you know, so I know it looks like I'm coming back on the sound. They get mad. The devil getting mad because this truth is going out. Y'all know what time it is. Y'all, this is what they don't want you to hear. Come on. September 10th, what happened? A few days later, the whole world rallying behind some man they didn't even know. So they don't want you ready for this truth right here. They don't want you ready with this truth. They want you to still be a church state defender. Okay, but nonetheless, as I said, they were all about defending church state, was all about defending the political ideologies, the land in which they have, and of course, the religion that they mingle together. Okay, this is historical truth that they don't want you to understand. The state, by the way of Constantine, made Christianity authorized, and it eventually became the predominant religion of the state. Why did it become the predominant religion? Because it's a power in the words of the Most High that was drawing people by way of the true disciples. So in order to destroy it, they had to bring it in. You can't defeat the word of the Most High. You can't defeat his people. Go back to Exodus. What did he say? What did they tell us in Exodus? The Pharaoh that was oppressive, could not stand the tribes of Jacob. So what did he do? He oppressed them because he was afraid that they would rise up in number, partner with their enemies, and the Egyptians will be in chains. So no different than what happened, because the people are literally not tucking tail, despite having to fight lions and bears in the Colosseums, being hung, being sawed in the tooth. They realized they were never going to be able to stop these people. So what did they get them to do? Stop themselves. And they did that by allowing them to come into so-called state-accepted religion. You understand what I'm saying, family? All right. Nonetheless, Yahusha had warned the Kodeshim, the consecrated ones, the 11, that he had commissioned and sent unto the nations. He did not warn everybody else. Okay. Why would that change today? Everybody named Mama believe, so-called Christian is what I'm saying, that they are going to somehow endure persecution because of their faith. Messiah never said you will endure persecution because of your faith. He did not say you will endure persecution because of his name. He did not say you will endure persecution because of the practices in which you follow that are okay and approved by the state. He said that you will endure persecution for the sake of his name. Important piece, family. Here is the proof. Here is today's proof. Here is the proof of this very day. All right. This is what Thomas Jefferson said when it comes to your so-called rights in America. He said, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Where is that in the scriptures? Anyways, that they are endowed by their creator. So whatever creator you believe you have gave you something. He said with certain unalienable rights, meaning you could have these rights no matter what. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The pursuit of happiness. This that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever a form of government becomes destructive to these ends, meaning when they start going against your so-called freedoms, inalienable rights, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So basically what he was saying was, you, whoever your creator is, gave you the right, gave you certain inalienable rights. Okay. And of those rights was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, meaning you should live and that you should be free and that you should be happy. You should pursue happiness. Notice how they said pursue happiness, meaning you may never get there, but at least we're going to let you go after it. They probably, when they wrote this, when he wrote this, he probably was thinking about all them slaves in his office that was in chains. Anyway, to secure the rights, and said basically if a government decides they want to go against your so-called unalienable rights, that you have the right to dismantle the government and start afresh. And you do that according to what you believe will make you happy and safe. Okay. The problem is, listen, they wrote this ideology for the people. They didn't ask the people what they thought. And they darn sure didn't go to the Torah, to the law, even to the scriptures to solidify this nonsense. Okay. And they said, if you have a government that goes against that, then you can dismantle them or alter them. And then you could come up with what you need for your safety and happiness. But they're not going to let you do that. Come on, let's be real. They're going to make you think you're doing it. They're going to make you have this illusion to feel like you're actually making it happen. That's how people feel when they go vote. They're like, man, if I can go vote, I can go get my happiness and peace from this next politician. But how much of that has failed horrifically in these last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 elections? Oh, man, right? Nonetheless, he was a founding father of Babylon, the last Babylon, last Babel, Mystery Babylon, a.k.a. America, all right? The world would not know Christianity if it weren't for colonization, period. That's how you know, listen, family, that is how you know the whole world lies under the sway of Hashatan. The whole world, except for those who are of Yahuwah, are serving the devil. Because if it wasn't for the people who came by way of conquest and crusades, they would not know Christianity that was established by the twisting of the ways of the Yahudim that was given unto them by the law, solidified by Mashiach. Okay, they created this ideology of church, state, and Christianity. And then they spread that nonsense when it's time for the European regime to rise, to give that to every nation you see now that is being persecuted, 78 countries, and I'm sure there's more out there that are being persecuted because they're following Rome state religion that they never would have known. They wouldn't have known anything about Sunday service. In fact, they would have known about a Bible because it was the Council of Nicaea and these people later on down the line who created the Bible. You get the KJV, and after the KJV came this revolt, which created the Protestants, and they removed tons of books from the so-called Bible, but they never changed they never taught the reality that they had no business with the word. What you would have had was recordings from the apostles, the life of the Mashiach, and the prophets and the law. That's what you would have had. But now we have this version of the truth that excludes significant pieces that people believe people don't have to put the puzzles together to realize they're not being persecuted because they follow the true Messiah. They're being persecuted by the religion that they were taught by the oppressor. Okay? Harsh reality, but it is true. This whole church state nonsense has swept the land, and it is the last key to pulling in the world for chaos, and after chaos, the one world order for the beast. Why would the Most High commit his word to such a vile, evil people? Why would he allow them to change the name, the way the people were understood by, to Christians, and there's no prophecy about this transition, this transformation? None. Because this is the work of people who have transformed themselves into ministers of righteousness, but at the end of the day, they are of the dark. They are of the night. They are of the wicked. Okay? And again, this is why people still do church. If it wasn't for colonization, a whole bunch of so-called Negro would not be going to church on Sunday. Asian people would not be going to church on Sunday. So-called whoever would not be attending Sunday service. They're literally following church, state, religion because of what was taught to them and made to seem right. All right. And now we have, as I said before, is persecution, so-called persecution everywhere for the so-called Christians. Well, look at what they're saying. Look at what they're asking for. They want to stop the persecution. They want justice for the persecution. Show me this at any time the apostles, the prophets, or Yahusha walked the earth. Show me any time this ever occurred. Did they walk around saying, give me equal rights, respect my religion? Okay. People are being persecuted for holding on to a title rather than actually being followers of the way. If they were followers of the way, they would not be demanding equality among the wicked. Makes no scriptural, prophetic sense whatsoever. It does not. It does not align. It doesn't add up. The reason why they demand equality, they demand justice, they demand some type of peace without persecution, is because they warning what the Romans had passed down through Europe to America and all over the stinking world. Christianity, state religion. They feel like they need equality. All right. There were 50 things in a post that I did not so long ago, and we darn sure not going to cover all of them. But there are 50 things that Christians believe, and this is only 50. Nowhere in the Bible. It's nowhere in the script, the book they read from, but they believe it wholeheartedly. They will tell you to your face that Sunday is the Lord's day. Okay? They will tell you that we're all spiritual Israel. And they can't find one thing to back none of this up. Okay? So if you haven't had a chance, hop on one of those social media pages and you'll see all 50 of these, right? The 10 Commandments was nailed to the cross. Can't find it anywhere in the scriptures, but they believe this. So when they go out trying to be so-called Christians and they stand by these things and they receive persecution, think what they're being persecuted for. Lies. Because at the end of the day, people hated Rome. To this day, Rome is still hated. Okay? Don't get it twisted. That's why they don't like that you worship these other deities, because it's Rome. All right? Yahusha said that his followers will be persecuted for the sake of his name, and his name does not contradict his word. So all these folks out here standing on the corner, so-called preaching in JC's name in these church pulpits or wherever they are, all right, LORD or whatever Hebrew version translation they believe or transliteration of JC, and they're preaching in this name, but yet the stuff they preach don't align with his word, and they want to get on and say, well, we're being persecuted. No, you're not. What you're doing is you're fighting and you're losing for the church state. That's what's happening. But when Yahusha went out and he spoke and he proclaimed it was the truth of his word. He was the right hand of the Most High walking the earth. He was the literal law manifested into the flesh. And when he went about, he did not speak in any way. He did not walk in any way that was contrary to the word, to Torah, to the prophets. He was the literal manifestation of what had been proclaimed about him and how we ought to live if we want to see the eternal promises. Yahusha never defended politics, land, or religion. You know how they say, pray for America, pray for world peace, pray that we all unite and come together. And I'm talking about Christians. I'm talking about anybody else, right? Christians make these prayers, but can the Christian find that anywhere demonstrated, prophesied, or commanded in the word? No, they cannot. Even the Messiah, Yahusha, the Redeemer, he did not even defend his own land. He didn't even pray for his own land. The only petition he made, the only palau he made was for the people whom the Most High had given him. Okay, who was prophetically determined to be his sent ones before he even got a chance to walk the earth. Okay, and the only one he lost, the scripture says, was the son of perdition, which was the backstabbing Judas. And notice that the Messiah had picked Judas. He just didn't sneak in. All right. Yahusha, nor his followers ever sought justice from the system. Find that in the word, family. Find it. Show me anywhere in the text that the Redeemer or his followers ever wanted justice from an unjust system for their so-called unalienable rights. Nowhere does that exist. All right. Prime example of this ridiculous heresy, John MacArthur wins $800,000 lawsuit for defying the Scare 19 mandates. Basically, he didn't like the fact that in California they said close your doors. So he defied them and they went after him, and he went to the state and he argued with the state about his so-called religious rights given to him by the state and got $800K off of that. How come Mashiach didn't come off the execution stake? How come the disciples didn't have to go through persecution? All that Paul did and said, he still got persecuted. But here it is, these so-called leaders of Christianity, and I do say so-called leaders, come out and say, well, we need to have our church doors open because that's the constitutional right. Fake. Doing the work of Rome. Right? We know in scripture tells us this is one of the most powerful solidifiers about the dividing of the state and the true way. All right. One day, as we were going to a place of petition, we went and met a slave girl who had a ruah, should be a lowercase, if you're doing the English understanding of divination. And she brought her owners much profit for fortune telling. Okay, so she was a fortune teller. She allowed Shaul, she followed Shaul and us, crying out, these men are servants of the Most High Allah, who proclaim to you the way of deliverance. This is what she said. She kept doing it for many days. What she was doing was mocking him, and Shaul became greatly annoyed, turned and said to the Ruah, the breath in her, the spirit in her, I command you in the name of Yahusha, the Messiah, to come out of her. And it came out that very hour. Okay. But when her owners saw that their hope of profit was gone, they seized Shaul and Silas and dragged them into the marketplace before the rulers, bringing them before the magistrates. They said, these men being Yahudim, or tribe of Judah, are throwing our city into confusion, and they are teaching customs that are not lawful to us as Romans to accept or practice. The crowd joined in attacking them, and the magistrates tore their clothes off Shaul and Silas, and they ordered them to be beaten with rods. After giving them many blows, they threw them into prison and commanded the judge to keep them securely. And having received such a command, he put them into the inner prison and fastened their feet into stocks. Okay, this is Acts chapter 16, verse 16 through 24. So what we saw here is the apostle Paul got tired of his woman with the demonic fortune-telling spirit in her, mocking them, talking about they're coming in the name of the true Redeemer, the Most High, Allah, the Mighty One. Okay, and he told her, I rebuke you. He cast them out in the true name, not no JC lie. Okay. And when they lost their profits, they was hot. She was a moneymaker for these wicked people, basically telling fortunes and stuff. And they went broke in 1 hour because the troop went out, shut their whole business down. So they took them to the marketplace. And what they said was, these men do what? Let's go back to that verse. It says in the highlighted part, they are teaching customs that are not lawful for us as Romans to accept or practice. That means they were walking according to the way. They were not walking according to the mingled or mixed so-called Christianity customs that was acceptable by empire and what? The people. Okay, they were totally different. And this started a massive problem with the apostles. They actually received persecution, not because of the name, but because of the sake of the name. They were teaching the way. They were teaching the law that Romans could not accept or practice. Okay, and they got a whooping for it right there on the street. Right. So if church was the way, how did this man get $800,000? If Christianity was the way, and the state was violating their practices that were not accustomed to or accepted by church state, then how did this man get $800, $800,000? It was not the way. Christianity has been alive from day one. When does the persecution of the true tribes and followers of the way begin? Now you're probably thinking, when is this going to happen? If it ain't happening now for us, those who are of the true chosen people, when does this actually kick off? Well, let's look what the scripture says. And the woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by Alua to be nourished there 1,260 days. Revelation 12:6. There's a reason why if you grew up in church or had your church experience at time, they said, don't you read that book of Revelation. It's too scary. I think a lot of pastors say that because they were just ignorant and they didn't want that truth to get exposed, or they didn't know how to even talk about it. All right. But at the end of the day, this book tells you exactly when the persecution of the chosen will be. They will be in the wilderness. Thus, those who make it, those who don't get sliced down, the 2/3 of the tribes and the Gentiles that fall under the judgments of the Most High will be exodused into the wilderness for 3.5 years to be nourished. Okay, not simply to eat food, but to receive what? Every word that comes out of the mouth of the Most High. As we know, the word says, man will not live by bread alone. Right, going in there to be Exodus chapter 20, brought under the bond of the covenant. Everything, times and seasons, and everything we need to know to be truly walking under the way of the Most High will be provided in the wilderness of those who make it past this judgment that's going to sweep this earth. Okay. Then we know scripture says after that, the dragon was enraged with the woman and went to fight the remnant of the seed, those guarding the commands of Alua, which is the mighty one, and possessing the witness of Yahusha Hamashiach. Revelations 12:17. I'm going to say it again. Just because people walk around saying a name don't mean they are his witnesses. Okay. Witness means evidence. Witness means proof. Your proof is the scars, the wounds, the battle scars that you got for guarding the commands. Those of you out here trying to keep the Shabbat, but they want to fire if you don't come in to work, right? Those of you who have family members who rejected you because you will no longer do JC, GOD, LORD. You've rejected church. You've rejected birthdays, holidays, Mother's Day, and all the other lies that Rome, church, state, empire gave the people, allow the people to do, saying that they're all spiritual Israel. This stuff is ridiculous. But nonetheless, those are the people whom the dragon, the beast, the man of sin, the lawless one will come after. Okay. We've already read this verse here. All right. That's 3.5 years in the wilderness. Understand the beast is not coming for those who guard church, religion, Christianity, free speech, etc. You will not find this nowhere in the word. You will not find this practice in the word from Genesis to Revelation in any of the apocryphal or apocalyptic texts. No one was persecuted for their political views who follow the true Mashiach, or whom Yahuwah the Almighty has sent among his people. They were not persecuted for their so-called unalienable rights. This is all deception. Many people, again, are falling under the sword all over the world because they're walking according to what the church taught them. They're walking according to what Rome, Europe, America taught them through colonization, not what is being taught as Messiah said, and this good news will be taught to all the world, and then the end will come. Not the good news that you have awakened from, that you were sleeping in, okay? So when you see all these groups out here, so-called Black Hebrew Israelites or IUIC, or any of these preparing for battle, we're ready for whatever type groups, they are literally preparing to be part of the 2/3 that are going to be destroyed from the house of Yahshua. This organization in particular, IUIC, is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. What does that mean? That means they are church, state, empire owned. Despite what they say, despite what they claim, despite how they mount up and march, they belong to Caesar. Slide on over to the other side. You got everybody named Mama showed up for the memorial service for a man they didn't even know was on the earth. Okay. And they all were at or going to return to church to do what? Follow the 501c3 Caesar established religion. That's what they're going to do. So when they go to war with each other, stay the heck out of the way. Let the wicked destroy the wicked. Leave these people alone. Okay? Don't get fooled by, I don't know how many of you seen back in the day, I might be telling my age a little bit, but the Columbine High School shooting, who remembers that? Where they supposedly went through the campus with guns and started asking people, do they believe in JC? And if they said, yeah, bam, it was over. What was that? It was a fight against the recruitment. Okay, the recruitment campaign for JC. That's all it is. It is not the persecution that you see is nothing but people defending what colonizers taught them. That's all it is. Okay, and this is this is the word. I'm not making any of this stuff up. This is the word applicable, applying, like putting two exact pieces of a puzzle together and it fits. Okay, they are preparing to do war with each other, all to defend what church state taught them. Despite them claiming to be chosen, despite the other people saying they're all spiritual Israel, whatever, we got to defend the Dust Bowl people, Revelation 2:9, 3:9 frauds. Listen, they are making way for the beast. That's what's happening. Messiah defended Torah, nothing else. He didn't defend no one else. It was so amazing, he didn't even defend himself. So what are these people getting ready for? All right? They're getting ready for true persecution that is promised to the rebels of the Most High, to the rebels of his word, the people still laden and loaded down with sin, but claim they're saved. This is what's coming. It's what's happening as we speak. It just haven't hit the heartlands of the places in great numbers as it has around the places that are not considered so-called empire. Okay. So expect this and nothing less. People are not, again, they're not standing on what is true. Because he said, how many will find the narrow path? How do all these people? I saw a person post on social media saying this is how we riot. And they were showing the so-called image of praise and worship inside of the memorial stadium, or the memorial at the stadium. But who were they worshiping? And why were they there? Exactly. People are right now, the world is being given the chance to choose a side. What side are we supposed to be choosing? Neither. Stay out of the mess. Let them fight it out. Let them slaughter each other. We of the way of Yahuwah, awaken to the knowledge of the truth, turning from our sins, leaving this world behind. Let these people lay each other out. Don't entertain none of them. Don't entertain any of it, because in the truth is, those with, if you ain't got eyes to see, but you at least got ears to hear, you need to be preparing yourself for the last Exodus. And understand, when it was time to exit, wasn't no bullhorn announcement given to the people. Wasn't no call, no rally cry, no yelling, none of that. The Most High has sent out a message by way of whom he had called, right? And he had made sure the people were prepared to go. They were practicing the way. They were not of the world at that time. Okay, of course, many of them didn't have the heart in truth for the word, and they were purged in the wilderness. But nonetheless, they were practicing the way. They were not practicing church. They were doing the Passover and unleavened bread feast. Okay, so when that judgment came sweeping through, they were out of it. Again, if you haven't checked out this, check out the series, Last Exodus. Okay, this is where you will find Most High let me go through a series all the way up into my own testimony of being exited out of our own place, right? Some of us who Most High have called as leaders to lead, we didn't establish ourselves. He established us, and he put us out there to say, look, you go and speak the word. But know this, you who are his chosen initially, you're going to go through what he's trying to tell you to prepare people for first, to get you to be the witness for him, right? You can't just go, the Messiah, no one preached nothing that they didn't endure. That's one of the problems with churchianity. Everybody's out here speaking so-called truth, but they didn't even go through nothing. They won't even testify about what they overcame, because in reality, they are still in bondage, because Christianity don't set you free. Christianity doesn't open the door for you to receive freedom. What opens the door for you to receive freedom is truth. He said, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Well, guess what? The truth was, there was no such thing as Christianity when Mashiach walked the earth. It came, as we said before, by way of what? The words and understandings that was given through Rome Empire, their language, their dialect. Okay. They called him the anointed because that's what they knew somebody to be who had followers behind them. If it was another person, Joe Schmo, whatever, he would have been anointed if he had followers. They couldn't understand the way. They didn't know the law. Only those who came in under the true teaching of the breath of the Most High, through whom he had put the breath of truth on, was able to receive the understanding of truth. What we are witnessing today is super duper hoodwinking. We're witnessing the bamboozlement of all time on steroids. That's what we're seeing. People in mass numbers are getting ready to go fight each other to defend empire. They're not going to defend the law. The Most High told his people way back in the wilderness, guard my commands. He didn't say guard your land. He didn't say guard your nation. He didn't say guard anything else but your way. He didn't even say guard you. Why? Because he kept his people when they kept his word. It's when they forsook his word that they became a defeated people. So when someone say you need numbers, come on, brother, let's just get along so we can have numbers to fight the enemy. What they're saying is they serve the devil. They still are laden with sin, and they're afraid of judgment that's coming to them. That's what they're telling you. They're just not being upfront with it. They're scared. These people are terrified, whether they be so-called black chosen, Asian, whatever, so-called white, whatever you want to call them. They follow these other ways, and they're terrified because judgment. You look around the world and all you see is judgment, period. And they're afraid they're next. So they want to lock arms with each other, whether it's in 1/3 truth, 2/3 truth, they don't want the entirety of the truth. Because when the entirety of the truth goes out, it's made plain. What does that do? That puts you on the narrow path. And it is found by few. It is difficult. It is not easy. Okay? Those who are being persecuted don't get to have the benefit of so-called church state tax write-off. They don't have that. They have the Most High they have to lean on and trust in. All right? So if you don't know already, I hope, if you didn't know before, I hope you know now. When you hear about persecution of church Christianity, it has nothing to do with those of the way. It has nothing to do with those who guard Torah. Okay? They're not the people marching and protesting and rallying. They're not those people. Okay? They are set apart. They are consecrated people. They are Kadesh. They don't involve themselves in the ways of the world, the nations. They don't need to go out and tell people on the streets, in conferences and places that they're chosen, they're special, they're rising up to win whatever they claim they want to win. No, sir, no ma'am. Okay, so everything we saw happen on the 10th, leading up to where we are now, that was a well-crafted, pre-planned deception to put before the eyes of people so that they can pledge their allegiance to their side. Okay? So you can move in a place of fear and believe that if you lock arms and you join their ranks, that you will make it happen and you will receive safety. No, you will not. You will be judged and you will be condemned in this life and the next. Okay? It's all a lie. It's all a lie. The Jimmy Kimmel, whatever, how you pronounce the name, the talk show guy, he was not canceled. Okay, that was all part of the show, family. They needed someone who had a big name among the wicked. Okay, someone that when they said his name, it can go viral easily. How do you know he wasn't canceled? Because he comes back on and he says, I believe in what? He said, I believe in free speech, which is, state empire. And he also believes in the teachings of JC. He comes back to say that. Yeah, it's about, again, building an alliance so that when it's time to go to battle, when it's time to go to war, people think they got the right numbers and they're going to win. But after the slaughtering that happens, because the Most High is going to remove peace from the earth, he's going to put these people in a place of perpetual judgment before they lose it here. All right. And then comes the system of the beast. And after the 3.5 years in the wilderness, this is when the world will know who the true chosen people are. He's not going to persecute his chosen people. The beast, the dragon, will not persecute the chosen people now because the world does not know or see or recognize who the chosen people are. They're still being seen as the Dust Bowl people, however evil, wicked, whatever. A lot of nations have risen against Dust Bowl folks. Okay, they're partner up to go against these people. But no matter how much they have partnered to go against these people, they have not accepted who the true chosen people are. They have not placed them in their so-called history books. They have not made any announcements. They have not acknowledged them. So they're not going to persecute the chosen people yet. And as we saw in scripture, it tells us clearly that persecution will truly begin, or not persecution, but the recognition of his chosen people will begin after he lays his hand on the land. All throughout history, we see his story. We see persecution, recognition of who the people are was always after he judged them. That's how they know when, as the tribes were moving through on their way to the promised land, they came to Jericho, and the harlot Rahab said, "We know what you're here for. We know that the Most High has given you this city into your hands." Okay, how did they know that? Nobody gave them a message. They didn't get a Instagram. They knew it because the judgments that were hitting the lands before they arrived to Jericho. So great fear, as he promised, his great fear had came up on them, and then they understood, okay, these are the tribes of Jacob. These are the chosen people of Yahuwah. Okay? So now at this time, you should be preparing your house for the last Exodus. That's what you should be preparing your house for. You should be preparing your house to hear the Most High speak when he say, go, do, stay, whatever. Okay? Scripture tells us to flee from the midst of the Chaldeans. Get away from the Babylonians, the Chaldeans. Who are the Chaldeans today? They are the patriotic Americans, the patriotic French, the patriotic Canadians, Germans, or whoever they may be trying to defend their land. Flee from the midst of them. Do not be among these people. Do not walk as they walk, because their walk leads to wrath. It leads to judgment, which they're going to tell you is Christian persecution. It's not. It's divine retribution and recompense for the evil that's done to the tribes of Jacob and against the Most High, and of course, all of humanity. All right. So all esteem belongs to the Almighty Yahuwah for his will, his word, his way. He've allowed it to be this day that we come to the knowledge of truth and context, and we get out of church ideology. It's so important. You have to, don't unlearn church, forget church. Whenever it comes up in your brain about something the church taught you, take it from your brain, toss it into the trash can. Okay? The enemy going to try to remind you of that nonsense because he wants you to believe that if you don't go or walk according to some pattern of church, that you will not make it, that you are somehow missing it. But that is not true. Yahuwah will be esteemed for all those who support this ministry. As I like to say, I love saying it, it is the Most High who leads you to support this ministry. I get so many people cuss me out on social media. Somebody sent me a private message and said, what the F is wrong with you? Calling JC Lord, right? And I had a civil response to the individual. And I said, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. They couldn't prove me wrong. I said, case in point, you prove who you follow by talking to me like that. And they said, well, I'm mad. I said, okay, but doesn't the book you're supposed to read from say, be angry and sin not? But they're not going to accept that. Why are they not going to accept that? Because JC gives them grace to do what they want to do, right? That's what the world is preparing for, family. Judgment, okay? They're not preparing to be persecuted. They're not preparing to suffer because they follow the true Messiah. They're preparing to do wrath because they said the law is done away with. The law is obsolete. They're telling you who they serve. To say the law is obsolete and nailed to the cross is to simply say the Messiah you claim to believe in, the true Messiah you claim to believe in, is obsolete. And he's still on the cross. If you nail the 10 commandments to the cross and he is the word made flesh, then according to your ridiculous doctrine, he's still on the cross. But nonetheless, the cross is pagan, came from Rome. Came from Rome, family. He was on the execution stake, hung on a tree. Okay, not on the cross. That's all pagan. It's all Hashatan nonsense. Again, all esteem belongs to the Most High. I'm excited about this word. I'm excited about this season because I realize all these doggone lies didn't do nothing but make me more excited for the word of the Most High. Drew me closer to him. I'm loving the dreams that he's given me. I'm loving the revelation that he has given me. The things that he's shown me. I'm built up and excited. I'm looking forward to seeing how he's going to move. What does the word say? His eyes go to and fro the earth, looking to see who he may show himself strong to. Is that you? Are you that one? I'm going to tell you right now. He's not going to show himself strong to you if you keep saying his name, if you keep thinking it's okay to say his name is Lord or God or JC or any of that other nonsense. He's not going to make himself strong to you if you say that his grace is sufficient and you don't need to obey him. He's not. He's going to leave you unto your own destruction. The destruction you have chosen for your own life. Okay? Don't follow the narrative of the world. The Apostle Paul said, be not conformed to the patterns of this world. The patterns of this world. So when the world is doing it, rallying, protesting, even petitioning, or what they call praying, get out of the way. Let them have it all. Let them do what they want to do. Okay, when all hell breaks loose and people start destroying each other, make sure you have yourself at home, away from these people. Let them destroy themselves. When the Most High tell you what to do, where to go, you can hear him clearly. All right? Hey, let's walk it out. Let's stay in the will of the Most High. Let's continue to follow the truth in context. Let's continue to stand against every single lie they've ever told you in church. It's all created by pagans. It's all created by demonic individuals. It's all created to lead you to the beast system. Okay? Persecution is for the judgment that's coming is persecution for the rebels, not for those who walk according to the truth. There is a final exodus. Read Ezekiel 20. That has to take place. And then once his people come to know who they are and the fullness of his way, then we will be known before the world. Okay, by way of judgments of the Most High, he said, with fiery wrath, with indignation and an outstretched arm, I will rule over you. I mean, he's going to slap a whole bunch of people down so that he can raise you up. All right? All esteem belongs to him. Remember, stay in his will, walk according to the truth, and always be less, which means to be blessed. you.